Hi, welcome back to the second hour of this Tuesday edition of Focal Point, AFR Talk. Excuse me. Had to sneeze, hit the cough button there. She didn't hear it, but here I am. I got 6 minutes. I was going to sneeze. Why didn't I sneeze sometime in the last 6 minutes? No, it's got to wait till right when I go on air. Focal Point, Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. You are listening to High Definition Radio, more content per cubic inch of air any other place on your radio dial. Let's grab a phone call. Number, if you want to join the program, 888-589-8840. Promised Scott from Independent, Kansas. We'd get him on coming right out of the break before we get back to content. Scott, thanks for calling and thanks for waiting. What's on your mind?
Well, I want to talk about the statue.
Yes, sir.
Now, I missed the first part of what was going on, but I'm getting kind of a grasp on what everyone's comment was.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is that all these removals of the Ten Commandments or anything religious, how can they say that this is justified but the Ten Commandments not, or anything religious, because of what it stands for? I mean, obviously the Ten Commandments are something positive, something good. Everything that you live by the Ten Commandments will produce goodness, but yet everything that the statue represents about, sin and is negative. How is it okay for them just on that? I mean, can't they fight on that argument alone?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they do fight it. And, and you have a great suggestion, Scott. If we lived in a rational world, I think your argument would carry some weight. But the reality is that we don't. We have judges that, in my estimation, are just out of control. They're not really being guided by anything any longer. And so, and we have this multiculturalism that says all religions are equal. I mean, that's out there. You can't elevate one religious tradition over another and say that it's better, because that would be discrimination, or that would be bigotry, or that would be hate. You can't say that Christianity is superior to Islam. You can't say that Judaism and Christianity both are superior to Islam or to Hinduism or to Buddhism, because that would be discrimination, and that's bigotry, and that's bad. You can't even say that Christianity is superior to Satanism in a multicultural world, because we've got to treat all religious traditions, all truth claims equally. That's how you get into this kind of absolute nonsense. And the point I was making earlier, and my column is up, by the way, at rightlyconcerned.com. If you'd like to read that column, have some of that information about the First Amendment, you can get it at rightlyconcerned.com. But Scott, listen to this, and this tells you how absurd things get quickly. Now, what Oklahoma's done is they've just called timeout. Look, we're going to wait for this thing with this demon, this Satan demon god statue. We're going to wait for that to work its way through the courts before we decide what we're going to do, because they are now getting flooded with requests for other statues and other memorials and other monuments. There is a Hindu group that has put in a request to put up a monument. There is an animal rights group. They want to put up some monument. And the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, they put an application in. They want to get their monument up there as well. And so Oklahoma said, look, time out. We're going to hold off. So, I appreciate what you're saying, Scott. I mean, there is nothing that isn't positive when it comes to the Ten Commandments. If you could recognize right away, if everybody lived by the Ten Commandments and everybody understood we were supposed to, and just a generation ago, that's where we were at. I mean, everybody understood that your life ought to conform to the Ten Commandments. Even if it didn't, even if you sort of chose to ignore it, you knew you were doing something that you shouldn't do. You knew that. You knew that in your heart. You knew that in your brain. You knew that in your mind. When you saw other people violating the Ten Commandments, you knew that wasn't right. You knew it was wrong. That was just a generation ago. Now, it's like all those traces have been kicked over. Like Ben Carson said, look, what we're doing is removing all barriers to hedonistic activity. There aren't any rules now any longer. And it was Phil Robertson. Thanks for the call, Scott. I appreciate that. 888-589-8840. Phil Robertson, this goes back to our conversation the last hour about how the Ten Commandments is the root of our law. And that's exactly right. It's the foundation of our law. And, Phil Robertson, I saw a videotape of a message he gave at Saddleback Church, Rick Warren's church in Southern California. And he said, look, if you disobey the Ten Commandments, you are going to wind up in court. That was his point. You're going to wind up in front of a judge if you ignore the Ten Commandments. For instance, if you don't honor your father and mother, you go out and you drive when you're not supposed to, you go out and drive drunk, you go out to some party and you get busted for drugs, even though your parents told you not to do it, where are you going to wind up? You're going to wind up in court. What happens if you don't obey the Ten Commandments regulation regarding adultery? You're going to wind up in court dealing with child custody issues, dealing with property settlement, dealing with financial issues. You're going to wind up in court. What happens if you murder somebody? You are going to wind up in court. What happens if you cheat somebody in business? You violate the 10th commandment that says thou shalt not covet, and you do it. Or you violate the 8th commandment that says thou shalt not steal. What happens to you? You wind up in court. What happens if you sign a legal document and you knew that what you were signing was inaccurate, maybe a financial statement or a tax statement or some kind of financial report that you have to file with some government agency? What happens if you sign something and you know it's not true? You violate the 9th commandment about giving false witness. What's going to happen to you? You are going to wind up in court. And that is proof positive that the 10 commandments are, in fact, the foundation of our entire system of jurisprudence and law. So we will see how all of that works out. I'll give you a winnable war moment here just in the last couple of minutes before we go to the break. We talked about this before. In fact, we sent an action alert out about the fact that a gay wedding had been scheduled for the Rose Parade. You remember that? We talked with you about that before the Christmas break. We sent an action alert out urging you to contact the chairman of the Rose Parade and complain. I sent my email off to him. I hope you did too. And I think, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that is a battle that we won. I've got 3 stories in front of me right here, all of them dealing with the same thing, that ABC and NBC did not show that gay wedding on their national telecast. They cut away when it came time for the couple to do the vows and do the marriage thing and do the wedding thing. ABC and NBC cut away. They did not show it. And I think the reason they didn't is because they heard from like-minded folks, people like you and me, said, look, we do not want that kind of sexual deviancy to be on television, and particularly what's supposed to be a family-friendly broadcast. We don't want to have to answer questions from our 5-year-old children about what these 2 guys are doing, kissing each other on national TV in a float in the middle of the Rose Parade. We don't want to have to deal with stuff like that. What are you doing to us here? So I think the American people complained. I bet you had some local affiliates that called the network and said, what are you doing? You know, I'm out here in Des Moines, Iowa. Our people don't want to watch this on our local network affiliate, ABC, NBC. What are you doing? So they made a decision not even to air it, and they're getting grief from a lot of gay activist groups. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is proof that we are fighting a winnable war. Be right back.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health